Hi everybody. So the first video for today is about equations. So please write these down. A mathematical sentence that has an equal sign is an equation. Finding the value for the variable to make the sentence true is called solving. So we're going to work on solving equations. Remember, at any point in this video, if you need to pause it, rewind, please go ahead and do so. And if you have any questions, just fill out that question form and let me know, and let Ms. Jimenez know. And this is Mr. Franco, just so you know. So the steps to solving equations are distribute, combine like terms, or as I affectionately call them, CLT. Move variables, which means using the inverse operation. So if we have a positive 2p on one side and we need to move it to the other, we would do the opposite of addition, which is subtraction. And then moving constants, which are our numbers without letters. So if we have a positive 30 and we need to move it to the other side of the equal sign, it would become a negative. And then to be done, we divide by the coefficient, which is the number touching the variable, to find our answer. So go ahead and write these notes, pause it. Now I'm going to keep going, but remember, pause anytime you need to. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see my work pretty clearly. And as I go along and I get better at writing, I promise it will get better. And please offer any suggestions at all at any time if you would like to help me. So the first thing we do is distribute. And when we distribute, I always draw my arrows from my number outside of the parentheses, because that tells me to multiply that number by everything on the inside. And sometimes people forget because they don't draw their arrows. So I always draw my arrows because it reminds me. So I have 7 times p. Well, we don't know what p is, so we're just going to combine those. So that means 7p, which really means 7 times p. Now we're going to do 7 times positive 3. So you got your calculators, or in your head, hopefully you know 7 times 3 is positive 21. Now we didn't do anything with this plus 9, so we're just going to bring it on down and write plus 9. Write down your equal sign. And now, do you have any parentheses on the other side? No. So we're going to do the same thing we did. If we don't touch it, we bring it right on down, and we make sure that we do not miss any of the signs. Next thing that we're going to do is combine like terms. I always look for the side that has the least amount of constants and variables and coefficients. Well, for us, for right now, that's the right side of the equal sign. So on the right hand side of the equal sign, I see 2p minus 10. Well, p and 2 has a p and 10 doesn't. So that means 2p is a coefficient and 10 is a constant. So that means that they are not alike. So I'm going to move them down, and I'm going to move them down just a little bit lower because I gave myself a lot of space for you guys to write notes. I'm going to bring down my equal sign. Now here's where I have to pay attention, and I like to circle my like terms. So my first is 7p. Now, does 21 and that strange looking 9 I wrote have a p attached to it? No, they don't. So that means 7p, it doesn't have any friends. So it's going to come right on down. But 21 and 9, guess what? Those are both constants and they are like terms. So we can, in fact, combine them. So what is positive 21 plus 9? Positive 21 plus 9 is positive 30. So when we combine those, we have positive 30. Like I said, Mr. Franco's handwriting will get better with time. Now we're going to move our variables. So moving our variables mean that we want to move our numbers with letters attached to them. And so we've got 7p and we've got 2p on the right-hand side of the equal sign. Well, we have to do this by doing the inverse. So if it's a positive number, which both of these are, in order to move them, we're going to have to subtract. Now you could do minus 7p to both sides, but that's going to give you a negative number, and that means we're going to have more work at the end. I always like to work easier, so I always subtract the smaller number. So the smaller number here is 2p. Now, whatever I do to one side, I always have to do it to its like term on the other side. So that means you really have to know what like terms are. And its like term on the other side is that 7p. Now, I always draw my big fat line, which is my addition and subtraction line, to keep myself in check. And I'm going to change up the color. So we did this one to get rid of the p's on the right hand sides, because 2 minus 2 is what? 0. That's why we did it. They cancel out. That's gone. Now what is 7 minus 2? 7 minus 2 is 5. And guess what? That p is still attached because we still have a number. And I just want to make sure that you can see clearly that that is a 5. There we go. Now, we didn't do anything with the plus 30, and we didn't do anything with the minus 10, so we bring those down, and do not forget the signs that are in front of them, because positive $10 in the bank and negative $10 in the bank are very different things, so we cannot lose signs. So now we're at the step where now we need to move our constants. So we moved all of our variables to the left, so that means we're going to have to move our constants to the right. So our constants, remember, are our numbers without letters attached. So I've got 5p. Well, that's a coefficient with a variable, so that's not my constant. But then I have this plus 30. So there's my constant that I have to move to the right. Now it's a plus. So to move it to the right-hand side, I've got to do the opposite. So remember, the opposite of addition is subtraction. And whatever I do to one side of the equal sign, I do to the other. Again, draw my big fat equal sign. Now I did that. Why? Because 30 minus 30 is 0. Thank goodness. We didn't do anything to this 5p, so we bring her on down. We bring down our equal sign. Don't ever lose your equal sign, y'all. And now let's do this math. Negative 10 minus 30 more gives me negative 40. Because if you're negative 10 in the bank and you borrow another $30, now you're negative 40 in the bank. All right, we're almost done. So to be done, we must divide by the coefficient, which is the number touching the variable. And the number touching my variable here, and I'm just going to continue to use black. What's touching my variable? We're solving for p because that's my variable. So the number touching my variable is 5. Now notice that this line that I drew is not across the whole thing. And whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. So what we have to do is take that 5 that's touching p, which means that when anything is touching, they're multiplying, we have to separate them. So in order to separate them, we have to do the inverse function. Well, we were talking about inverse function with addition and subtraction. So now what is the inverse function for division? Well, the opposite of multiplication is division. So that's why we wrote the division lines, because they look like fractions, right? Well, fractions are nothing but divisions. And we do that because 5 divided by 5 is 1, which leaves us with our p. And negative 40 divided by 5 gives us a negative 8. Box it in, you are done. Solve. So go ahead, take a minute, make sure you write that down. Write it nice and neat, okay? And we will go on to the next video in a minute. Thank you.